The mornings were always the quietest part of my day. The sunlight came in soft through the east-facing kitchen window, warming the same oak table my wife, Marilyn, had picked out back in '88. I still sat in her chair sometimes, the one that creaked a little when she leaned forward to pour coffee. That creak had started 10 years ago, but I never fixed it. Some things aren't meant to be repaired. The house was quiet now, too quiet sometimes. 35 years in these walls, every board nailed with my own hands, every corner filled with echoes of a life that used to be louder. Christmas mornings with wrapping paper flying, prom night photos in the hallway, Sunday dinners where Marilyn would hum while she mashed the potatoes. All gone now, reduced to framed memories and the faint scent of her lavender hand cream that still lingered in the bathroom. But I managed. I always managed. Mowed the lawn every Saturday. Cleaned the gutters each fall. I even patched the roof myself last spring, much to the horror of my neighbor, who said men my age shouldn't climb ladders. I laughed it off. What else did I have to do? Then the call came. "Dad, things haven't been going great," Jason said, his voice wrapped in guilt and charm like it always was when he needed something. "We just need a place to land for a bit, just until I figure things out." I didn't hesitate. He was my son. What kind of father says no to that? "Of course," I told him. "The guest room's made up. You still like chili?" He laughed, but there was hesitation in it. "Yeah, Dad. Thanks." I set out 2 more place settings that night, warmed up the chili, and opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving since Marilyn's birthday 2 years ago. I even turned down the bed and put a couple of chocolates on the pillow like Marilyn used to. It felt good, needed, useful again. That was before I saw the way his girlfriend looked at my house like it was a showroom. Before she said, "Wow, it's like stepping into a time capsule." Before I realized nothing was ever just temporary. She was tall, blonde, and wore sunglasses inside the house, like she was shielding herself from my lighting choices. "Lacey," she said, extending a limp hand as if shaking mine was a chore. "You must be Frank." Her tone made my name sound like a diagnosis. Jason trailed behind her, shoulders hunched, carrying 3 designer suitcases I was sure he hadn't bought with his own money. "You remember the guest room?" I said, forcing a smile. "Still has your old posters on the closet door." "Yeah," Jason mumbled, dropping the bags with a grunt. "I'll get to those later." Lacey glanced around the foyer like she was trying to decide whether the house smelled like history or mildew. "Wow," she said again. "So cozy." Marilyn used to call it homey. I preferred that word. Coziness can be bought at Target. Home is built with scraped knuckles and second mortgages. We had dinner around 6. I made spaghetti, the way Jason liked when he was a kid, extra garlic. No onions. Lacey picked at it like it might be poisoned. "Do you have almond milk?" she asked, wrinkling her nose at the picture of 2%. "I'm lactose sensitive." I almost told her Marilyn used to be too, but drank the real stuff anyway because Jason said it tasted better. But I just said, "No, just this." She passed. The conversation was mostly me trying. Jason didn't say much, just scrolled on his phone between bites. Lacey asked if I had Netflix, and when I said I still use DVDs sometimes, she nearly choked on her sparkling water. After they went upstairs, I sat in the living room alone. Watching the hallway light flicker through the gap in the door, they didn't bother to close. I heard Lacey say, "I don't know how long I can live like this. It's like staying at your grandpa's hunting cabin." Jason didn't answer right away. "Just give it time," he said eventually. "He'll come around." To what? I didn't know. But something shifted in me that night. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. I thought about Marilyn's photo on the mantle and the promise I made to her before she died. "Don't let anyone take what we built, Frank. Not even family." I should have listened harder. It started small like it always does. A missing envelope from the kitchen counter. A bank statement I knew I left in the to-file tray. Gone by morning. At first, I chalked it up to absent-mindedness. 68 isn't ancient, but it's old enough that people stop correcting you when you forget things. But I hadn't forgotten. I knew the way I kept that counter neat, labeled, always by the book. I'd been doing it that way since before Jason could spell his name. Then I walked in from pruning the hedges one afternoon and caught him with my desk drawer half open, one of my folders in hand. He froze. Just for a second, but long enough. "Hey, Dad," he said, recovering quickly. "I was just looking for stamps." He smiled. "Easy. Casual. Too easy." "Drawer below," I said, not smiling. "Always been in the drawer below." He nodded, gave a half laugh. "Right. Forgot." That night, he asked me about the deed. "Just out of curiosity," he said, stirring his coffee like it was nothing. "How is the house titled? Joint? Living trust?" I read something about tax advantages on Reddit. Reddit. Right. I looked at him for a long time before I answered. "Still in my name," I said slowly. "Has been since your mother passed." "Ah. Got it," he replied. "Just, you know, thinking ahead. For the future." I watched him as he took a sip. His hands were steady. Too steady for someone just thinking ahead. The next day, I found Lacey in the garage, poking through old storage bins. "Looking for an extension cord," she said, waving off my question. "We want to set up a little office area in the guest room. Jason's working on some investment stuff." "Investment stuff," I repeated. She smiled. "He's always had a good mind for money." I nodded. Even though I knew he barely passed math in high school and used to call me to help him balance his checkbook until he was 27. At dinner that night, Jason asked what kind of insurance I carried on the house. I said I was tired and went to bed early. The spaghetti didn't taste like anything. That night, I double-locked my office door for the first time in 20 years. It was the sound of my own name that made me stop in the hallway. My hearing's not what it used to be, but a man recognizes his own name when it's said like that, like it's a problem that needs solving. I'd gone to the kitchen for a glass of water. It was just past midnight. The house creaked in familiar ways, the way old houses do, but the murmurs coming from the guest room were new. I took a step closer. "He won't last much longer," Lacey was saying. Her voice was hushed but sharp. "He's getting slower. You said it yourself. He forgot where he put the gas bill last week." "He didn't forget," Jason replied. "He was testing me. He's not as senile as he looks." I felt my heart rate slow instead of speed up. Something cold settled in my ribs. "You need to push him on the power of attorney," she whispered. "He trusts you. That's the key. Once you have that, we can do whatever we want. Sell the place, reinvest the money, put him in one of those nice facilities with a golf course or whatever." Jason sighed. "I know. I'm working on it. He's just stubborn, sentimental about the house, about Mom." "Then use that," she said flatly. "Tell him it's what she would have wanted. Old people fall for that stuff." Old people. My son. My flesh and blood. I stood there, gripping the hallway wall like it might collapse without me. I thought about the chili I'd made him, the quilt his mother had sewn that still sat folded at the foot of his bed. I thought about the 50,000 I pulled from retirement to pay off his student loans. He called me stubborn. She called me old. Together, they were planning my erasure. "And if he refuses?" Jason asked. "We'll make him see reason," she answered. "Everyone has a breaking point." I backed away from the door slowly, careful not to make a sound. In the living room, Marilyn's photo looked out across the dark. Her smile, frozen in time, didn't seem so warm anymore. They thought they were being clever, whispering in shadows. But they forgot something. Old men hear everything, especially when no one thinks they're listening. I hadn't seen Peter in 3 years, not since Marilyn's service. He'd brought flowers and a casserole dish I never returned. Back in the day, he was the kind of lawyer who wore brown suits and used fountain pens. The kind who remembered your kids' names and sent Christmas cards even after retiring. We met for coffee under the guise of catching up, but he knew the real reason the second I sat down. "I take it this isn't just social," he said gently, stirring 2 sugars into his cup like always. He never liked the bitterness. "It's Jason," I said. "And the house." He didn't ask questions, just nodded and reached for his briefcase. "Got your file right here. Still keep things on paper," he added with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You and Marilyn were smart. Joint ownership with right of survivorship. When she passed, it transferred to you automatically. And since then, solely in your name," he confirmed. "No liens, no power of attorney filed, no quitclaim deeds. Nothing. Clean as a whistle." I exhaled. For the first time, in what felt like weeks. "Anything else I should know?" He hesitated. "You're not the first client to ask about this, Frank. Adult kids get ideas when they see what houses go for these days, especially if they're drowning in debt." I said nothing, just looked out the cafe window at the passing cars, the couples holding hands, the world that kept spinning, even as mine tilted. Peter tapped the folder lightly. "You still have full control. They can't touch it unless you let them." I nodded, stood up, and left a 20 on the table. It was more than enough, but I didn't feel like waiting for change. On the drive home, the streets looked different, sharper, somehow. Like the world had put on new glasses. I passed the hardware store where I used to buy bolts by the pound, the diner where Marilyn liked the pie. None of it felt the same. At the next red light, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw myself. Just an old man, maybe, but an old man with a deed in his name and a fuse slowly burning. Jason thought he could take what wasn't his. I was about to remind him who built it. It was meatloaf night. I always make it the way Marilyn did, crushed saltines instead of breadcrumbs. A little Worcestershire, never too much ketchup. Jason used to love it. Lacey never touched it. "Red meat is kind of a toxin," she'd said once, right before ordering a triple cheeseburger from DoorDash. Jason was quiet during dinner. Lacey scrolled through her phone, one perfectly manicured finger flicking over the screen with military precision. I could feel it coming. That slow crawl in the air, like a storm building over the mountains. Then Jason put his fork down and cleared his throat. "Dad," he said, "we need to talk about the future." I didn't look up. "That so? You're getting older," he continued, like he was reading from a pamphlet. "And this house, it's a lot to manage alone." I cut another slice of meatloaf, let the silence stretch. Lacey jumped in. "We were just saying how assisted living communities have really come a long way. Some of them have pools, art classes." I chewed slowly. Jason tried again. "We just want you to be safe, Dad. You left the garden hose running for 2 days last week." "I was watering the tree line," I said, "on purpose." He blinked. "Right. Well, we found a place, just to look at. It's only 10 minutes from here and…" "No." He stared at me. "Just no?" "That's right. Dad, don't be stubborn. It's not about taking anything from you." "But you are," I said quietly. "You're trying to take everything." Lacey looked between us. "Maybe we should discuss this another time." "No," I said again, sharper this time. "Now's fine. You've been in my office, my files. You've asked about my insurance, my deed. You think I don't notice, Jason?" He paled, just slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me in the house I built." The silence that followed was thick. Lacey stood up first. "Maybe you're right," she muttered, walking toward the stairs. "Maybe we should talk later." Jason stood slowly. "We're just trying to help, Dad. You want me out so you can move in. But let me be clear. I'm not leaving. Not now. Not ever." His jaw clenched. "You might not have a choice." I met his eyes. "You'd be surprised what choices I still have." He didn't respond. He just turned and walked away. But I'd seen it. The mask had slipped completely. And what was underneath wasn't my son. He made the tea himself that night. "Figured I'd give you a break from always being the one to clean up," Jason said, too chipper for someone who spent most evenings half glued to his phone. He set the mug down in front of me, steam curling upward like a ribbon. Chamomile, my favorite. Marilyn used to brew it for me when I had trouble sleeping, which was often, especially in those last months. Thanks, I said, watching his hands. He'd always been a fidgeter. Bounced his knee, tapped his fingers, but tonight, his hands were still. Too still. He hovered just a second too long before turning to leave. I waited until he was upstairs before I took a sip. It tasted off. Slightly metallic, like the time Marilyn had bought that off-brand kettle, and we didn't realize the interior was corroding. Still, I drank it. Maybe I didn't want to believe what I already knew. Maybe some part of me thought he wouldn't go that far. I remember making it to the living room. I remember the clock reading 9:41 p.m. I remember feeling the world tilt sideways, like someone had quietly taken a bite out of gravity. Then nothing. I woke to concrete. My cheek was pressed against the cold basement floor, and my first thought was absurd. The pilot light must be out. It's freezing in here. Then I tried to move. My head swam, limbs like wet sandbags. I sat up slowly, blinking at the single bulb hanging above me, flickering like it was struggling to stay awake. My phone was gone. The narrow staircase behind me was shut tight. I pushed against the door. Locked. Solid. Not even a rattle. I looked around the room. No food. No water. Just old paint cans, some stacked boxes, and the dusty remnants of a life I'd almost forgotten. The broken sled Jason used as a boy. Marilyn's old sewing table. A cracked mirror leaning against the far wall. They put me down here like an afterthought. No note. No explanation. Just tucked me away. Like clutter. I sat on a folding chair, hands trembling not from fear, but from clarity. This wasn't just a push. This was removal. Jason hadn't asked me to leave. He'd taken the decision away. Entirely. And in doing so, he made one very big mistake. He left me time to think. It's strange how fast your brain can convince you nothing's wrong. For a few seconds, maybe less, I thought it was morning. The kind where you wake up too early. Not sure where you are, or why your back hurts. But it wasn't my bed that made my back ache. It was cold. Concrete. I blinked, slow and sticky. The light above buzzed like a dying insect. I pushed myself up again, this time steadier, the ache settling into my joints like it was moving in for good. The door at the top of the basement stairs was closed. I took the steps one at a time, careful not to slip. I tried the knob. Locked. I knocked once, then twice. Nothing. Just the sound of my knuckles echoing back down the wooden steps like they were laughing at me. "Jason?" I called. Silence. I banged louder. "Jason, open the damn door." No answer. Not even footsteps. I kicked it hard. The vibration rattled through my hip. I tried again. Nothing. He wasn't upstairs. Or worse, he was. And he didn't care. I checked the corners for a spare key. I already knew wasn't there. My workshop table was still against the back wall, buried under tarps and dust. The far side held a few rusted tools, and the wooden box where Marilyn used to keep spare light bulbs. I wasn't dead, but I'd been buried just the same. I paced the room, every footstep stirring old smell sawdust, rust, something faintly floral from one of Marilyn's forgotten candle jars. I'd built this basement as a place to work, to create. Now it felt like a tomb. There was no clock, no windows. Just the steady, infuriating tick of that damn light, swinging gently from its wire like a noose. I sat on an overturned bucket and listened. Nothing. No cars. No television. No life. He'd done it. He'd locked me down here. And from the silence above, I knew he didn't plan on letting me out. When you're trapped in a box, your mind doesn't stay in the box with you. It starts wandering. You can't stop it. I thought about Jason's first baseball game. He struck out twice, then sat on the bench staring at his shoes. Marilyn brought orange slices and told him every swing was one step closer to a hit. He smiled, like he believed her. Back then, he still believed a lot of things. I remembered the night he stayed up crying over a girl named Brianna in 10th grade. I made him hot chocolate and said something half-wise about the way time softens sharp edges. He said I was a dinosaur, but he hugged me before bed. And I remembered Marilyn warning me years ago when Jason was in college and already borrowing money he never paid back. "He's good at charms," she said. "But charm's a sugar coating, Frank. It melts if you don't watch what's underneath." I brushed it off. Said he just needed time. Said I believed in him. I always did. I remembered the day we signed the papers for the second mortgage. Jason needed help with his down payment. Marilyn had just finished chemo. She looked at me like she wanted to scream but said nothing. Just signed her name beside mine. Then walked outside to water the roses even though it was raining. I remembered that too. The rain hitting her headscarf. The way her shoulders curled like she was trying not to break in front of the hydrangeas. And here I was, 30 years later, locked in my own basement by the same boy I used to carry on my shoulders through 4th of July parades. The same boy who cried when his goldfish died. The same boy who now called me a liability. I didn't cry. Not then. But I sat there on that bucket, in the dim, flickering dark, and felt something shift. Not break. No, that had already happened. Something hardened. And I realized Marilyn hadn't just seen it coming, she'd known. She'd tried to warn me. And now, it was too late for warnings. But not too late for something else. Not too late to remind him who taught him how to build. And how to tear something down. It started with footsteps. Not Jason's usual sluggish stomp, but the light clatter of multiple shoes. Then came the laughter. The kind that doesn't belong to a house in mourning or reflection. It echoed through the floorboards like a mockery. I tilted my head toward the ceiling, hearing the distinct pop of a champagne cork. Laughter again, louder now, joined by a woman's voice I didn't recognize. "God, this place is huge. You could throw a wedding in here." Then Lacey, "Right? And you should have seen it before we moved in, looked like an antique store," exploded. More laughter. More footsteps. Music started, some upbeat playlist I didn't recognize. Something pulsing and smug. I sat on the basement floor, staring at the underside of the ceiling that used to be mine. My chest felt hollow. Lighter somehow. Like something inside me had finally broken free. They were celebrating. Up there, just 20 steps above my head, they were toasting to my absence. My silence. My removal. Lacey's voice again, shrill with delight. "How long do we have the place to ourselves?" Jason's answer was muffled by the thud of a bass drop. But I caught the word, indefinitely. That one word cracked something in me. Not because it confirmed what I already knew, but because it proved something far worse. He wasn't hesitating. He wasn't even pretending anymore. I could hear clinking glasses, someone yelling, "Cheers!" and a chorus of toasts followed by Jason laughing loud, unrestrained, too full of himself. The kind of laugh you hear from a man who thinks he's gotten away with it. I stood up, legs stiff, and walked back to the workbench. My fingers trembled not from weakness but from rage held too long. There had to be something I could use. Some way to make this count. And then I saw it. Buried beneath a rusted flashlight and some old drill bits was the dusty black casing of an old mini-recorder. The kind Marilyn used when she was practicing interviews for her journalism class. I held it in my hand like it was a loaded weapon. The party raged above me. But below, I was finally ready to listen. The recorder was heavier than I remembered, solid metal, not plastic like the new ones. I popped in the batteries I found in a drawer and prayed they weren't dead. The red light blinked once, then held steady. I stood beneath the heating vent near the old utility sink cone of the few places where sound traveled between floors. Jason used to use it to sneak phone calls past curfew when he was 15. I'd pretended not to notice then. Not anymore. I hit record. The voices upstairs came through fuzzed, but clear enough. "He's not going to need the place anymore. Jason was saying. He's settled in, trust me. He won't be a problem. Someone laughed. What'd you do? Tie him up? Jason chuckled. Nothing that dramatic. Just gave him something to help him sleep. Old man practically tucked himself in. More laughter. Lacey again. We're already talking to a realtor. Market's hot. Once the paperwork clears, we're golden. The red light on the recorder blinked with every word. Every confirmation of the betrayal I'd suspected and now heard in surround sound. We'll flip this place. Maybe move out to Scottsdale, Jason said. Somewhere new. Somewhere without history. The word hung in the air. Without history. This house was my history. Every beam, every bolt, every inch of drywall, I'd put it there with my own hands. Jason's nursery was still painted beneath the wallpaper in the guest room. The porch swing still creaked the same way it did the night Marilyn told me we were going to be parents. And now my son was turning it all into a blank canvas. Honestly, he said, voice rising above the clatter of more drinks being poured. It's a relief. He's been lost since Mom died. He needed this. He just didn't know it. Relief. That's what I was to him, now a weight lifted. A problem solved. The room around me buzzed with electricity. Not from the light, but from the blood in my veins turning hot with clarity. I stopped the recording, played it back once. Every word rang clear. I had it. Proof. I tucked the recorder into my shirt pocket and sat down on the cold concrete floor, hands folded. They'd written my ending upstairs. But I'd just found my rewrite. I'd nearly forgotten the drawer. It wasn't one you'd find unless you were looking for it, and no one but Marilyn and I ever had reason to. Back when I built the workshop, she insisted we have a place for what-if documents. Wills, policies, burial instructions, things no one wants to talk about when life still feels long. She called it the last drawer and made me promise I wouldn't forget where we kept it. I hadn't. Not really. It had just gotten buried in the noise of the years. But now, sitting there with Jason's recorded confession in my shirt pocket and the buzz of betrayal still ringing in my ears, I remembered. I walked to the far end of the basement, past the furnace and the shelves sagging with paint cans. The old workbench stood exactly where I'd built it. Solid oak, scuffed and burned from 100 projects. There was a small gap underneath the bottom drawer so thin it looked like a flaw in the wood grain. I knelt slowly, knees popping, and reached beneath. The notch gave way with a soft click. Behind the false panel, a flat metal tin, dusty but intact. Inside 2 manila envelopes, rubber banded together. The first held our original deed. My name and Marilyn's, typed in clean black letters. Joint tenancy with rights of survivorship. I remembered signing it in the lawyer's office, Marilyn's hand trembling slightly, not from nerves but from morning sickness. Jason had already begun his existence when we claimed this land as ours. The second envelope was our will list, updated 6 months before she died. Everything passed to me. No executors. No contingencies. Jason would get what was left when I was gone. That had always been the plan. Until now. I laid the papers out on the workbench and stared at them in the light of a flickering bulb, as if seeing them could help me rewrite history. They were more than documents. They were proof. Not just that the house was mine, but that I hadn't lost my mind. They'd planned to bury me in this basement with no name, no claim. But the ink on these pages was still mine, and I had just remembered exactly where I stood. Marilyn had a habit of preparing for things no one else could see coming. "Honey," she used to say, "I'm not being paranoid. I'm being practical." She'd grown up during hard times, parents who hoarded canned peaches and buried coffee cans full of cash. That mindset never quite left her, which is why, years ago, she'd asked me to carve out a little space behind the pegboard wall in the corner. "Just a few shelves," she said, "for emergencies." I'd called it silly then, overkill, but I did it anyway, like I always did when she asked with that stubborn little smile. Now, 30 years later, I found myself staring at the same wall, The pegboard paint faded to a dull gray, one corner lifting just enough to make me curious. I grabbed a pry bar from the workbench, wedged it under the edge, and pulled. The wood groaned but gave way, revealing the cavity behind. It wasn't much, just 3 shelves and a floor panel. But what sat there made my breath catch. A gallon jug of distilled water, 2 flashlights, a small first aid kit, a pack of batteries, a rusted lockbox, an old transistor radio, a Ziploc bag with $500 in 20s, 50s, and hundreds rolled tight with a rubber band that snapped when I picked it up. And tucked in the corner, like an afterthought, a note. If you're reading this, it means something went wrong. Or maybe I was right all along. Either way, be smart, Frank. Protect what we built. M. I sat down on the concrete floor and let the silence stretch around me. She'd always been the planner, the anchor, the one who looked at chaos and started organizing drawers. Even from the grave, she was still guiding my hand. I cracked open the lockbox. Inside keys, labeled garage, shed, safe, all mine. Jason didn't know about any of this. He didn't know his mother had planned for the worst, that she had trusted me to follow through. I closed the panel and pushed the pegboard back into place. They wanted me buried, but Marilyn had given me tools, and I had just remembered how to use them. I laid everything out on the workbench like it was a crime scene. 1 flashlight, half charged. A bundle of cash that still smelled faintly of old cedar. 2 batteries, both crusted at the edges but still willing to work. And at the bottom of the tin box, wrapped in bubble wrap like it was fragile porcelain, sat a small black cell phone. One of those prepaid flip models you get from gas stations. The kind Marilyn had called her just-in-case line. I powered it on. The screen flickered to life, dim and stubborn, like it had to remember what its purpose was. 1 bar of service. No Wi-Fi. No apps. Just call, text, and a tiny camera with a scratched lens. But in that moment, it was more valuable than anything Jason had ever brought into this house. I scrolled through the contacts. Only 1 entry. Peter, lawyer. I nearly laughed. Trust Marilyn to have our lawyer's number memorized into a burner phone like we were planning a heist instead of a retirement. I typed a text with slow, careful fingers. Peter, it's Frank. Need help. Locked in basement. Jason drugged me. Trying to take the house. Call me. Urgent. The message hung there for a second, spinning in limbo. Then, sent. The single bar of signal pulsed like it was straining to breathe. I didn't expect a miracle. Hell, I didn't expect the phone to turn on. But now I had something I didn't have before. Connection. Possibility. And maybe, just maybe, witnesses. I looked around the basement again. It didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like a workshop. Like a place where you build the thing you need, when no one else is coming to do it for you. I stuffed the cash into my sock, taped the recorder beneath the workbench, just in case, and turned off the flashlight to let the shadows settle again. This wasn't escape yet, but it was the beginning of a plan. And that was enough. It was the lens that gave it away. No bigger than a fingernail, nestled behind a dusty vent grate near the far wall. A small black eye that hadn't been there a week ago. I'd cleaned that vent twice a year since 1990. Twoke knew every screw and speck of rust. But that lens didn't belong. Not to me. Not to Marilyn. And definitely not to anything that was part of this house before Jason moved in. I stood still, hands at my sides, breathing through my nose. My first instinct was to rip it out of the wall and stomp it into plastic shrapnel. But I didn't. Because that's not what a man does when he knows someone's watching. Instead, I smiled. Then I slumped onto the folding chair in the corner, rubbed my face, and let my body sag like the weight of the world had finally won. I played the part. Old, broken, defeated. Let him see what he wanted to see. Let him feel like the king of his little kingdom while he sipped his drinks and told his lies above my head. I yawned dramatically, talked to myself, just loud enough for the mic to catch. Maybe I did forget where I put the gas bill. Getting old, I guess. Then I turned away, made a little show of lying down on the cot I'd built from scrap wood years ago, pulled a dusty blanket over myself like it mattered. I waited. 1 minute. 2. And then I saw it. A faint red light, blinking from the corner of the vent. Active. Live. The bastard had wired in a feed, probably connected to his laptop upstairs, watching me, studying, making sure the sedatives were working, that his little prisoner wasn't up to anything. Fine. Let him watch. Let him think I was fading. Let him see a weak old man counting his regrets. Because while that camera watched me, I was watching back. And by morning, I was going to give it a show he'd never forget. The emergency phone didn't have much juice left. I turned it off after sending the first message, hoping to buy myself a little more time. But when the silence upstairs stretched past midnight and the cold settled deeper into my joints, I knew I had to try again. I flipped it open. The screen blinked once, then dimmed. 1 bar of signal. Battery icon flashing red. A warning I didn't have the luxury to obey. I typed slow. Careful. Peter. Still here. Basement. Jason forged deed. Please act fast. I have proof. Come alone. Be smart. I hit send and waited, watching the wheel spin like it was deciding whether I deserved salvation. Delivered. Not read. Not replied. Just delivered. That would have to be enough. The battery icon disappeared. The screen turned black. Dead. Just like Jason had hoped I would be by no too confused. Too broken. Too tired to fight. I sat in the dark again, holding the dead phone in both hands, like it might still have something left to give. I thought of Marilyn. Thought of her handwriting on birthday cards. The way she'd cross her sevens and curl the tail of every Y. Like she was writing love notes, even in grocery lists. She would have known what to do. But she wasn't here. So it was up to me. I stashed the phone under the floorboard behind the workbench, next to the cache and the recorder. I wasn't done yet, but I was out of time. Above me, a chair scraped. Footsteps. 2 voices murmuring. Jason and Lacey. The vultures were circling, and the body they thought was cold, still breathing. Upstairs, Jason moved like a man who had already won. I could hear it in his voice, louder now. Sharper. No more quiet plotting. No more whispers in corners. He was rehearsing his new role. Homeowner. Sole inheritor. Master of the estate. We've got the papers, he said, pacing the kitchen above my head. I practiced the signature 10 times last night. It's solid. Lacey giggled. What if someone checks? They won't, he replied. The notary's a guy I know from college. Works under the radar. For the right price, he'll stamp anything. My stomach turned. You said Frank's signature looked shaky on his old documents, right? She asked. Exactly. If anything, mine looks more consistent. No one questions a neat signature. People only raise eyebrows when it's messy. I heard him open the fridge. The clink of a bottle. A toast, maybe, to my erasure. I already emailed the scanned deed, he said. Once the stamp goes on and it's processed through the county, it's official. He's got no legal claim anymore. Lacey whistled. And the house is worth what again? Close to $900. More if we flip it. $900,000. A number that didn't just represent equity, it represented decades. Sacrifices. Calloused hands. My wife's last breaths taken under the roof I built with borrowed tools and broken sleep. And he was selling it like it was a used car. I pressed my hand against the ceiling beam above me. He thought the house would fold to his signature. But he didn't know the paper trail I still held. The real deed. The last will. The recordings. The contacts. The woman I married, who made sure everything was filed right. He didn't know what was coming. Jason wasn't selling my house. He was selling the bait in the trap I was setting. Peter always was a man of action. I knew if anyone would believe me, truly believe, may it be him. He had stood beside me at Marilyn's funeral, hands clasped, tears running down behind thick glasses he never wiped away. He was old school, loyal. And when he read my message, I knew he wouldn't hesitate. He didn't. The call to the sheriff's office came at 8:14 a.m. sharp. I'd find out later that he used the phrase, urgent welfare check, and made it clear he believed my life could be in danger. He gave them my address, said he had reason to believe I was being held against my will. But before the cruiser even pulled onto our street, Jason got wind of it. I don't know how, maybe a call from the notary tipped him off. Or maybe he was just watching the front camera and saw the squad car inching up the drive. Either way, by the time the deputy knocked on the door, Jason was ready. "I'm really sorry," he said, voice syrupy, sweet, full of practiced grief. "My father's been in decline since my mother passed. He's confused, paranoid, wanders sometimes. We've been trying to keep him safe." "Can we speak with him?" the deputy asked. Jason put on the perfect frown. "He's resting right now. Heavy meds. Doctor's orders. I can show you the power of attorney if that helps." He produced a paper. Forged, of course. Neat and legal looking. Stamped in just the right places. The deputy hesitated. "Look," Jason added, lowering his voice. "I love him. We all do. But he's not well. He needs help, not a patrol car." The cop left. Not happy, but not suspicious enough. And just like that, I vanished again. This time not in a basement, but in the eyes of the law. Jason didn't know the text had gone to more than just Peter. Didn't know that beneath his feet, the walls were starting to shake. I had to move fast. The basement was cold but familiar, every screw, every nail, every tool still mine. I started collecting parts from drawers I hadn't opened in years. Fishing line, duct tape, an old motion sensor from a Halloween display, the cracked Bluetooth speaker I never threw out. MacGyver wouldn't have been impressed. But I wasn't building a bomb. I was building a message. Jason liked to watch me on his little hidden camera. Thought he had the upper hand because he could see me wasting away. So, I decided to give him a show, something he wouldn't forget. I set the speaker under the shelf near the heating vent. Hooked it up to the emergency phone's SD card slot. That recorder had done its job. Captured every brag, every slip-up. But this time, I wasn't recording. I was playing it back. I rigged a basic loop. Jason's voice came through, grainy but clear. "He won't be a problem." Click. He's settled in. Practically tucked himself in. Click. Power of attorney? Yeah. He'll sign anything if I say Mom would have wanted it. Click. I layered it, with just enough reverb to make it sound like it was echoing from some dark corner. Anyone listening wouldn't know where it was coming from, just that it existed. Then I rigged a tension trigger with the fishing line across the stairwell, just enough to knock a paint can off a top shelf when the basement door opened. Not enough to hurt, just enough to rattle him. Maybe even make him think I'd gotten out. I set a dummy blanket pile on the cot. A bundle of clothes shaped into the outline of a body. I even put my spare boots at the edge, like I was sleeping. And then I waited. I didn't have a clock, but I could feel the sun rising upstairs. And I could feel Jason's little kingdom starting to lean. He had the deed in his pocket, but I had the story. And I was about to make damn sure the whole house heard it. It was the paint thinner that did it. Marilyn always told me to throw it out, that it was a fire hazard, that we didn't need it anymore, but I kept it anyway, tucked behind the old shop vac. She was right, of course. But she wasn't thinking about escape plans when she said it. I soaked a rag in the stuff and slid it under the water heater. Not enough to ignite, just enough to make it smell like it might. I opened the valve slightly and left the pilot light humming. The gas wouldn't catch, but the scent would do the heavy lifting. Then I waited. It didn't take long. Footsteps above. Jason muttering. A cough. Then panic. "Do you smell that?" he shouted to no one in particular. "Shit! What the hell is that?" The sound of the basement door unlocking was sharper than any alarm. He came down fast, probably thinking I'd knocked something over, maybe thinking I was unconscious from the fumes. He didn't even see me. I was in the dark corner behind the shelving unit, crouched low, holding the old wrench from the workshop bench heavy, rusted, still reliable. The second he passed me, I moved. One step. Quick. Clean. The wrench met his skull with a dull thock that sounded too final. He crumpled like a scarecrow, one arm twitching before going limp. I checked his pulse. Still there. Shallow. Slower than mine. I didn't wait to celebrate. I took his phone, his keys, and the burner flip I'd hidden in the toolbox. Then I ran. Not up the stairs through the basement storm doors. The ones he forgot to chain shut because he never remembered how this house was built. Outside, the morning air hit my lungs like ice. I nearly dropped to my knees just from the shock of freedom. But I didn't. I had one more floor to climb. One more room to reclaim. And I wasn't done yet. The kitchen was silent. Too silent for a house that had been blaring music and lies just hours before. Jason was out cold in the basement. And Lacey, well, she was asleep. I could hear her light snoring as I crept past the guest room. I didn't look in. I didn't need to see the woman who helped bury me. I moved like the house remembered me. First, the office. The drawer I'd once locked out of paranoia now open, ransacked. Papers scattered. But not everything had been taken. They'd missed the side slot behind the cabinet rail. The one Marilyn made me carve out back when we still trusted banks, but liked a backup. Inside, the original deed. Crisp. Untouched. Folded in the same manila envelope I'd placed it in the day after Marilyn died. Below it, our will. Initialed. Notarized. Untouched by Jason's greedy hands. And in the back exactly where I left, it was the emergency USB. Marilyn had insisted we keep scanned copies of every major document there. Just in case, she'd said. Well, just in case had arrived. I grabbed the documents, wrapped them in a towel, and tucked them under my arm. I didn't want to carry a bags make noise. My boots were silent on the hardwood. This was still my home after all. My muscle memory knew every creak and quiet step. On the way out, I passed the photo wall Jason's kindergarten picture, his high school graduation, that blurry beach shot from the trip we couldn't really afford. I paused at Marilyn's portrait, the only one where she wasn't smiling. I touched the frame. Almost done, I whispered. Then I slipped out the front door before Lacey's next breath. The world was waking up outside. But inside that house, everything was about to change. The floor safe was buried beneath the old rug in the upstairs linen, closet tucked beneath extra sheets, and that lopsided heating pad Marilyn always swore worked better than the new ones. Jason had walked past it 100 times and never thought to look. That was the difference between a thief and a builder. A thief sees what's visible. A builder knows what's hidden. I rolled back the rug, pried up the wooden plank, and brushed off the dust. The combination lock turned with stiff clicks, each number a memory. The code had never changed our wedding date. Even after she was gone, I couldn't bring myself to change it. The safe creaked open. Inside, the old cigar box with 20,000 in small bills, rolled tight and banded. My military discharge papers. The certificates for 2 matured bonds from '97, Marilyn's engagement ring, my grandfather's watch, the title to the truck Jason never asked about but would have gladly sold. I took everything. Every piece of value, monetary or otherwise, went into the bottom of the coat I'd thrown on as I escaped. The ring went into my shirt pocket. The watch I strapped to my wrist. The bonds I folded flat and slid behind the will. I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I was reclaiming. The house could be repainted. The locks could be changed. But this box, this was the heart of what they came to steal. Jason would wake up with a headache and an empty room. thinking maybe the police hadn't shown yet. But what he wouldn't know, what he could never undow, is that the safe had been emptied by the man he thought was too old to fight back. I used Jason's phone. Felt poetic somehow. I walked 3 blocks down the road, enough distance from the house to avoid suspicion or interference, and ducked into a bus shelter. No one there but an old chewing gum ad and a pigeon with a limp. I dialed. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Frank Mullen, I said clearly, firmly. I'm 68 years old. I've just escaped from my home where I was being unlawfully imprisoned by my son, Jason Mullen. I have evidence. I need officers and an investigator at my address immediately. The pause on the other end told me everything. Sir, you said imprisoned? That's right. Drugged. Locked in a basement. He forged my signature, tried to sell my house, and has a notary involved. I have audio recordings, the original deed, the will, and backup files. I've sent this information to my attorney, Peter Halstead. He's expecting your call. Silence. Then, we're dispatching a unit now. Are you in immediate danger? Not anymore, I said, glancing back toward my house, the one that still stood, but not for him. I gave them everything: names, dates, file names, passwords, to USB folders labeled "in case." Marilyn's touch, even from beyond. I told them to knock loudly, to expect Jason to lie, to expect Lacey to cry, to not leave without speaking to me or Peter. When I hung up, the air felt heavier, not with fear, but with the weight of justice coming. They'd tried to erase me. Now their names would be on a report: fraud, elder abuse, unlawful imprisonment. They'd left me with nothing but memory and silence. But I had turned both into a weapon. And now? Now they'd hear me loud and clear. I didn't wait for sirens. The police would come. That was certain. But I didn't want to be there for the noise, the flashing lights, or the performance Jason would surely put on when the cuffs clicked. I'd done my part. It was time to go. I backed the truck out from the detached garage at the edge of the property, an old F-150 that hadn't seen much road since Marilyn passed, but still roared to life when I turned the key. A good engine doesn't forget how to run. It just needs a reason. The back seat held everything: the deed, the will, the USB drive, the bonds, the recorder, the money, the photos Marilyn loved, even the ring box. I didn't take clothes, didn't take a toothbrush, just took what mattered. I drove slow down our street, past the mailbox I'd built with Jason when he was 12, past the rose bushes Marilyn planted the spring after his graduation. The house shrank in the rearview mirror, like it had been a stage set the whole time: false walls, hollow rooms, and a script written by someone else. The stars were just starting to fade as the sky hinted at dawn. I didn't know where I was going yet. Maybe Peter's cabin, maybe a motel on the edge of nowhere, maybe just away. But wherever I went, I wasn't running. I was removing myself, leaving behind the man they thought they buried in the basement, taking with me the only thing Jason never understood: ownership of the house, of the story, of my name. Jason was still in his bathrobe when the cruisers pulled up, 2 squad cars, unmarked sedan behind them. The neighbors peeked through their curtains, caught between curiosity and coffee. Lacey screamed something from the guest room as the officers spread out, guns holstered, but ready. Jason opened the door with his hands raised, just enough to look innocent, but not enough to look guilty. "Officers," he said, eyebrows drawn in exaggerated concern. "Is this about my father?" "It is," the lead officer said. "Step aside, sir." "Of course, I'm worried too," Jason said, clutching his chest. He's been not himself, mentally unstable, possibly wandered off. I was just about to file a report. The officer didn't even blink. "Frank Mullen called us this morning. Filed charges. Said he was being held against his will. Drugged. Locked in the basement." Jason laughed too hard Too fast. That's absurd. He's delusional. He forgets what day it is. I was protecting him. Funny, the officer replied, pulling a small bag from his pocket. Because we've got audio recordings, deed documents, forged signatures, all sent to our department, and your notary friend's already been picked up. Jason's face froze mid-smirk. Lacey appeared in the hallway, mascara streaked and mouth open. Jason, she whispered. Sir, the officer said, you're under arrest for elder abuse, unlawful imprisonment, attempted fraud, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. He was cuffed mid-sentence. No, this is a mistake. You don't understand. He's not well. I was helping him. This is my house now. Not anymore, one of the officers muttered. As they let him out, the neighbors stared, phones recording, doors cracking open. Jason turned his head, scanning the street. Where is he? He shouted. Where's my father? But Frank was already gone. Truck wheels humming down some forgotten state road, the rising sun in his eyes. And Jason? Jason was just now realizing, you don't get to steal a legacy. Not without consequences. Lacey always struck me as the kind of person who'd do fine under pressure, sharp tongue, quick smile, never flinched when things got tense. But I'd misjudged her. Turns out, she was only strong when the script was rehearsed. When the police brought her in for questioning, she folded faster than a lawn chair. According to Peter, she didn't even wait for her lawyer to show. All it took was a copy of the audio recording, the one where Jason laid out the whole scheme, bragging about getting rid of me, and she unraveled. Said she thought it was just about the house. Said she didn't know Jason was planning to drug me. Said she assumed I had agreed to let them stay. The investigators played more of the recording. Jason's voice, laughing, talking about flipping the place, assisted living, breaking points. Lacey cracked clean down the middle. I thought he was just helping his dad, she said, hands shaking. He said Frank was slipping. He said it was for the best. Then she paused. He told me he had power of attorney. The detective asked if she ever saw the paperwork. She didn't answer. Instead, she asked for water and started crying. They took her statement, recorded every word. It wasn't a full confession, but it was enough. Enough to validate my story. Enough to bury Jason. By the time they let her go, the news had already started circling local blogs, then a few regional outlets. Man escapes basement after son's plot to steal house. It wasn't how I imagined making headlines at this age, but it worked in my favor. Jason was going away for a long time. And Lacey? Well, she'd have to live with her choices. Same as the rest of us. The cabin sat just outside town limits, nestled among tall pines and gravel roads. 1 bedroom, 1 bath. A screened-in porch that looked out over a quiet creek that hadn't run dry in 30 years. Peter had helped me sign the lease with cash and a nod, no questions asked. Just a firm handshake and, I'm glad you're still standing. I moved in with a box of clothes, a duffel bag of documents, and Marilyn's ring still in my pocket. I didn't hang pictures, didn't fill the drawers, but I slept. And when I woke, it was quiet, not just in the cabin, but in my chest. No footsteps overhead, no laughter that didn't belong, no walls closing in. I kept the USB drive in the safe Peter lent me, kept the deed, too, though I had no intention of selling. The house was still mine. The authorities had frozen any transfer attempts, and Peter was filing charges to reverse the forged power of attorney. But I didn't go back. Not yet. The place needed to be cleansed of lies, of betrayal, of the echo of chains that had no business in a family home. So I stayed at the cabin. Read old books. Listened to birds instead of vents. Cooked quiet meals on a single burner stove and watched dusk settle through pine needles. I didn't need revenge anymore. I had something better. Distance. Peace. The start of something new. And when I looked out over that creek, I knew one thing for sure. They'd written me off. But I wasn't done writing. The day I put the house on the market, I didn't flinch. Peter handled most of it, of course. I wasn't interested in bidding wars or open houses. I just wanted it gone clean, above board, legitimate, the way it should have been from the start. It sold in 8 days. Cash buyer, no contingencies. Young couple expecting twins, wide-eyed and starry like Marilyn and I had once been. I walked them through it, room by room, the sunken den, the cracked tile in the laundry, the loose board on the porch swing. I told them the truth, not about Jason, not about the basement, just about the house, what it meant, how it stood. When I signed the final papers, I didn't feel loss. I felt relief. And when the wire cleared, I walked straight into the bank and opened a trust. Not for me, not for Jason. For Olivia, my granddaughter. She was 7 now, still drawing crooked hearts on birthday cards, still untouched by her father's ambition, still worth protecting. I instructed the bank to release the trust to her on her 21st birthday. Enough for college, or a business, or whatever dream she'd fight for, without stepping on anyone to reach it. Peter asked me if I wanted Olivia to know. Not now, I said. Let her grow up free of it. Let her build her own story. He nodded. And Jason? I gave him a look. Jason would find out soon enough. They let inmates receive mail, even in county. I kept it short. No legal threats, no explanations. Just the words he needed to re-and, nothing more. I wrote it by hand, in the same blocky print I used to sign his permission slips with. Jason, you tried to bury me in the basement of my own home. I built that basement with my hands. Every brick, every nail, every square inch. You thought I wouldn't remember how to get out. You forgot I was the one who built the damn exit. The house is sold. The money's gone. None of it is for you. Next time, think twice before crossing the man who laid the foundation. Dad. I didn't sign it with love. Not because I didn't still hold some piece of it for him, because part of me always would. That's the curse of being a father. But love, now, was no longer unconditional. It had terms. And one of them was truth. I sealed the envelope and dropped it in the mailbox outside the cabin. No return address. He'd know. He'd know exactly who it was from, and exactly why it ended the way it did. The porch creaked under my chair, like it was remembering how to hold me. The cabin was quiet, just the wind brushing the trees and the soft churn of the creek behind the woodshed. I didn't miss the house. Not the square footage, not the crown molding Jason always bragged about, not even the sound of Marilyn's wind chimes, though I'd taken those with me. I sipped my coffee, black and a little bitter, just the way I liked it. The cup warmed my fingers as the sun started to rise behind the ridge, painting the tree line with a glow soft enough to make you forget it ever got dark. This place wasn't fancy. One sink, one stove burner that hissed when it got too hot. The plumbing groaned like it had secrets, but it was mine, still mine. No cameras, no voices through vents, no footsteps plodding on the floorboards above me, just peace, hard-earned. Sometimes I'd catch myself looking over my shoulder, expecting the past to crawl back up the stairs. But then I'd remember he's not coming. Not here. Not anymore. Jason had a new home now, one with bars, and a view far less forgiving than mine. And me? I was free. I thought about Marilyn as the light stretched across the porch rail. She would have hated the vinyl siding, but she'd have loved the quiet. I imagined her sitting next to me, legs curled beneath her, a hand on my arm. "You made it," she'd say. I'd nod. Sip again. Took me long enough. I watched a bird land on the edge of the feeder I'd rigged from an old tin can. It pecked once, then took off. The wind stirred the pines like they were whispering secrets back and forth. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the silence speak. Sometimes, you have to lose everything to remember your worth. And sometimes, the old man bites back. This story was brutal. But this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.